All right, we're going live in a segment here.
Judd and Dubay from the renterswarehouse.com studio. Chip Scoggins joined us at 10 o'clock. If you missed that or any earlier part of the show, you want to hear it just after 1 o'clock today, go to the Judd and Dubay show page, 1500ESPN.com, and you can listen back on the podcast. Also, going until 1 o'clock today, the Judd and Dubay big bid for this week from Executive Exteriors in Plymouth, 2 $5,000 roof certificates. So you can bid on one of them, or you can bid on both at a value of $10,000. Your first
Phil and Ted. Be specific which one you want to.
Phil and Ted, and you're not going to pay that much. That's the key thing to keep in mind here. You're going to get a good deal, and if you need a new roof, 1500ESPN.com, Judd and Dubay's big bid for this week is the place to go. All right, I teased with the fact that another current but close to being former Green Bay Packer might end up wearing purple this season.
They know the way across the river, don't they?
They really do. Ever since Chile started bringing them in, right? He brought in Ryan Longwell year one.
Yep.
When Robert Ferguson was let go, the receiver, he brought him in. They obviously brought Brett Favre in.
Did they really?
Took a look at, you might recall the 2009 season.
Mm-hmm. Some stuff from 2009, I remember.
Took a brief look at Javon Walker before deciding that the receiver was washed up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now, according to my buddy Jason Wilde of ESPNMilwaukee.com, the Packers intend to release linebacker Desmond Bishop if they can't restructure his contract or work out a trade. Clearly, Ted Thompson is not going to trade Desmond Bishop to the Minnesota Vikings.
Right.
But working out a trade in the National Football League is not the easiest thing to do, Jeff Dubay.
No.
And so there is an outside chance if the restructure doesn't happen, Desmond Bishop, who I believe is still represented by a local agent, Blake Barrett's, Desmond Bishop could be on the market. And I would say if you're the Minnesota Vikings right now, you have probably kicked the tires on just about every available linebacker out there who might be reasonably priced. Wondered if you would, if Desmond Bishop gets released, wonder if you would take a look at him. I would think you at least would examine the process.
But if you're Green Bay, why would you not trade him somewhere for like a 6th or 7th round pick? I mean, if you really want to get rid of somebody and you don't want to just release him and put him on the market, I mean, you can get a 7th rounder for just about anybody, can't you? I mean, wouldn't somebody give up a 7th rounder for Desmond Bishop? And if you're Green Bay, wouldn't you do that to keep him specifically away from Minnesota? Not to mention, at least you get something. I mean, it's not that hard to make that kind of a trade.
You would think so, but I have seen guys let go for because they can't restructure before who don't get traded. So yes, in theory, I think what you're saying makes perfect sense, but I don't know. I don't know if it's completely realistic that they can trade him at this point. It might be. It might be. They might be able to get something for him. I'm not saying they can't. And they're obviously not going to trade him to the Minnesota Vikings.
Which linebacker spot does he hold down for them?
They play
because they play 3-4.
They play a 3-4. They play a 3-4. I don't recall exactly which one he holds down for.
Well, he's one of the middles.
And yes, and I don't know how. And he has had injury problems as well.
Okay.
So he's had some issues. So it's not a slam dunk that the Vikings would pick him up. What I'm saying is, if you're the Vikings, given where you're at.
Oh, God.
In the process of your linebacker.
Can you imagine if we take an injury at any of the linebacker spots?
You have to take a look at guys, right?
I mean, yes. I mean, the guys you're going into the season with outside of Greenway scare me. If anybody gets hurt, you're screwed.
Yes.
I mean, you'll be playing. You might as well start enrolling guys off the drum line, off the skull line.
I'm not convinced entirely that the Vikings are done linebacker-wise. I could very easily see a case where when the training camp cuts start to be made, especially the last one, they either make a trade for somebody like they did A.J. Jefferson from Arizona last year, the cornerback, where they give up a late-round draft pick, or where they pick somebody off the scrap heap. And it might be a guy that we've never heard of, but who they like. I'm not entirely... I'm not convinced by any means the linebackers that they have here right now are the complete linebacking core that you're going to see come the opener in Detroit.
I hope not. I mean, again, at the very least, you got depth issues. I mean, we know for a fact you've got experience issues, at least at 2 positions. But I can't even imagine, again, what would happen if you have to start going 2-3 deep at any of these spots. I mean, that's going to be a problem for most teams at most spots. But, I mean, if Aaron Henderson is the best middle linebacker you have and he goes down, what do you have behind him? And then whoever takes his spot, on the outside there. I mean, if that guy goes down, I mean, who's it going to? It's going to be the Penn State kid, isn't it? Not Mowdy, but the other guy.
Hodges.
I can't ever remember Gerald Hodges' name. But Hodges is going to be starting in that spot. What if he goes down?
But if I tell you that opening day you're going to have Aaron Henderson, Chad Greenway, and Marvin Mitchell, does that make you feel good?
No.
That's my point.
No.
That's my point.
Well, yeah. I mean,
so if Desmond Bishop gets released, you at least have to take a look at it.
Absolutely.
Those are the type of guys you have to take a look at.
Well, you know what? Though, as we get into as we get to training camp and then into training camp, I mean, this is we joke around sometimes about waiver wires and people want to jump on a guy because they see the name or whatever, and they say, well, you got to be careful, you got to tread lightly. These guys are getting released for a reason. The Vikings have to look at everyone. I mean, anybody who gets released at any point between now and the start of the season, I mean, they've got to. I mean, are they in a position to not? You say.
I think they do that anyway.
Well, you said don't they have to look at Bishop, but don't they have to look at everybody?
Yes. And my point being is in final training camp cutdowns, when teams go down to 53 just before the regular season starts, that's where you look at everybody. And sometimes you pick up a guy that nobody's ever heard of, that we haven't heard of. But that doesn't mean he's bad.
But you're looking for upside. You're looking for somebody who's got something that nobody's seen, not somebody who's got a drop left in a tank that has been emptying for years.
And Greg Jennings, when it comes to how the Vikings are building this team, Greg Jennings is the exception. He's not the rule. They would rather go after guys with upside. They would rather go after guys that, although we might not have heard of that player is on the come, as they say.
Correct.
That player is not a guy who has been playing for 6 years.
Right.
So Greg Jennings is not the norm of what Rick Spielman wants to do. The Vikings went and got Greg Jennings because they desperately needed a receiver.
Yep.
And they needed somebody who was a professional. They needed somebody who could help their younger receivers. Yep. They needed somebody, quite frankly, who could run a route effectively. Yeah. Michael Jenkins could run a route, but could he do it effectively on a consistent basis? Probably not.
And no matter what your plan is, at some point you got to improvise. I mean, you can't stick to a plan to the letter in the National Football League. I mean, things change as you go. Opportunities arise that you didn't think would be there that you have to take advantage of, or maybe something goes actually off the tracks a little bit that changes you to go a little bit in the other direction. I mean, every plan's got to be fluid. I mean, except for Green Bay's. For some reason, Ted Thompson is so unwavering in his refusal to ever go out and get anything on the free agent market that I think it is actually counterproductive. I think you've got to open your mind a little bit when it comes to altering your plan and just being open to trying some things along the way. Like you said, the Jennings thing, does that fit a philosophy that the Vikings want to operate a franchise under? No, but I mean, you need a receiver right now to know if you have a quarterback. You were a playoff team last year that has a harder schedule this year. You had to upgrade a couple areas if you were going to have a chance to repeat or to take a step forward from what you did a year ago. And this was a good opportunity.
It concerns me if you're the Packers, if I'm a Packer fan, and I'm not, even though I was accused of once again yesterday being a Packer fan.
Again.
If you're a Packer
fan,
if you're a Packer fan, it concerns me if your answer to your offensive line problems is flip-flopping everybody.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
No.
That's not an answer.
You've got to be a little yielding, don't you, from time to time?
Well, and the Vikings went the absolutely correct route last year. They didn't listen to all this, you got to go draft a receiver in the first round.
Have you had enough I told you so's on this one yet? When are you going to have enough I told you so?
Matt Khalil. No, but that's the absolute right pick. That's the absolute right pick. You go fill that left tackle position, and assuming you can sign him to that second contract, he's yours for about 10 years.
Yep.
And you don't worry about it.
Yeah, I feel really dumb for having championed the cause of Blackman as much as I did. I mean, I loved him in college.
He's a bad kid, I guess.
Yeah, I guess he is.
Troubled kid.
Yeah. I mean, I loved him in college, and I know he's not. He looks bigger on the field than he is. He's not a real tall guy, but the way he's built, I thought he had a lot of TO to him, which he might.
Well, and part of the reason why the Vikings might have had no interest at all is they do a good job on their research.
Yeah.
There's a good chance
but you know what?
This kid had enough problems, they said, no thank you, too.
Elite 10-year receiver or elite 10-year left tackle? The left tackle has more value. I mean, he just does. It's a more important cog to your offense. And then they made the right call.
It might be the second most important position on offense with a right-hand quarterback.
I agree. Absolutely.
If you don't have a left tackle, look what happens. If you have a left tackle like McKinney, who athletically is gifted, but only cares sometimes,
you better have a right-handed quarterback. I mean, a left-handed quarterback.
Look what happens.
Yeah, you better go and get Jim Zorn.
He damn near got Brett Favre killed at TCF Bank Stadium.
Yeah, absolutely. And you care. You hit the reason. He barely cares.
Yes.
He just barely. He's hardly even engaged. Which is hard to imagine. If you're on an offensive line in the National Football League, I mean, like in the trenches, how can you not care? I mean, he's a huge guy, so he's not at huge risk. But I mean, I'm not a big when the live bullets are flying kind of guy when you talk about football. But nonetheless, I mean, you would think if you're not somewhat engaged at a position on the offensive line, you take a beating.
How sad is this statement I'm about to make to you? Bryant McKinney would have been a Hall of Fame left tackle if he took the mentality that he had when he was drunk onto the field.
Well, I know.
He was a nasty, When he was drunk and he hit the bouncer with the pole,
but he
that
also
was a nasty streak that you wanted to see on the football field. But he was never like that on the field.
Well, but there's more than one Brian McKinney drunk. I mean, you could get the Love Boat horny drunk, and then what do you get on the football field?
Talk about the Fred Smooth
thing. Then what do you get? Then what do you get on the football field? Then is he still a Hall of Famer, Mr. Horny Drunk guy? I mean, not you, McKinney. I mean,
all I know is if you got the right end to tick off Bryant McKinney, and Bryant McKinney was drunk, he would have been a Hall of Fame player. He would have killed the right end, but he would have been a Hall of Fame player.
Okay, I'm going to leave that one alone. But however, he also, let's not forget, when the draft was approaching, was considered to be the top overall pick at one point. So, I mean, he really did, the luster did come off this guy.
Didn't he not give up a sack at Miami?
Well, no, I believe he did go the whole time without giving up a sack. And anybody who's ever stood next to him, you know he's a freak. I've never seen anybody like this man in my life. Yep. I mean, he's like a human being, only jumbo sized. And I'm not just talking about height and weight. His head is the size of a beach ball. His hands are the size of baseball gloves. His feet are the size of snowshoes. I mean, he is a freak of nature. I mean, he's not just tall and strong. I mean, he is proportionate to his head. What size is his head? 10 3/4? I mean, in all seriousness.
I told you one time I was talking to somebody in the Viking locker room, and he playfully gave me a tap on the back, just playing around.
Yeah, probably punctured a lung.
I fell forward.
Yeah.
And he was just playing around. He was not being mean. He was just one of those
I always thought he was a nice guy.
Good-natured things. He was a nice guy. That's the problem.
Yeah.
He was too nice a guy,
right.
unless he was full of booze, and then he was phenomenal.
Unless he was horny.
Unfortunately, it's not legal in an NFL game.
But, I mean, have you physically, have you ever seen anybody like him? He's a black Paul Bunyan.
No, because
he's a freak of nature.
No, because you know why? Because as big as he was gifted athletically. He had greatest feet ever. He had.
No, they were huge. What were they, size 20s?
But he and Pat Williams had this gift too.
He was not a freakish human being in terms of his size.
No, but
he was just a big fat guy.
He and Pat Williams
I ain't fat, I'm fine.
For big guys, they could have been tap dancers. They had great footwork.
Yeah.
They had great footwork, but unfortunately,
I bet Gregory Hines would take exception to that if he was still alive, but nonetheless.
All right, I'm going to give you have one word for this tease, because this is a tease. What happened in Los Angeles last night was...
Is out of line is hyphenated, so that's one word, right? Out of line? Can I say out of line?
We'll tell you why it was out of line next. Judd and Dubay from the RentersWarehouse.com studio on 1500 ESPN.
Judd, why don't you go ahead and explain to the people what we just did?
All right,
what did they just see?
That was just hold on a second, it was the 10:20 segment of Judd and Dubay. That's right, we're back to doing in-show videos. We forgot to do the pre-show video.
I'm a slacker and I'm sick.
Jeff's not feeling well.
You got pneumonia.
I'm only battling pneumonia. It's only bacterial. It's no big deal. So anyway, we forgot to do the pre-show video, so that was an in-show video.
He licked my cup.
Talking NFL. Because it's June, you can always talk NFL. Right, Dubay?
Always. The NFL never goes away. There's no off-season. They're still trying to get a 13-month added to the calendar, and I think they might get it.
Anyway, if you're seeing us for the first time, the show is Judd and Dubay, 1500 ESPN. We work out of the RentersWarehouse.com studio.
I'm the good-looking one.
You are, and you can hear us, even though we're both sick, you can hear us from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. weekdays on 1500 ESPN.
Well done. Where's the button on this thing?